will grow up acutely aware that there are forces at large alien to his way of life. 12 years old, and he has seen the face and forces of evil.
Oh, gee, boy, I hope this isn't the big one.
In the middle of the Nevada desert, a model community was set up to undergo an atomic blast under controlled test conditions. Inside the houses, various mannequins were arranged to simulate American families at home, unaware of the imminent disaster.
Hit it! Come on back and let's play a little house so we can act like
It's shocking. I watched him gyrate his legs and swivel his hips. And our parent-teachers group feels he should not be on television.
Well, he just feels the rhythm, digs it the most. You don't see anything wrong with it? No.
Hey, Johnny, what are you rebelling against?
What do you got?
I think probably the most rebellious thing I used to do was I used to wear my belt buckled on my hip.
The economy was starting to boom, and for the first time ever, teenagers had money to spend.
It's a very modern hip. Huh? A Rolex rule.
Kids everywhere were inspired to break with the old and take on a new look and a new attitude.
Is that a Beatle haircut you've got?
Yes.
How'd you work it out?
Well, I just let my hair flop around until it's all messy.
What do your parents say about it?
They don't like it.
You don't care if your parents like it or not?
Nope.
They look like girls to me.
They do not.
Oh, they don't?
They look like boys.
Your parents want you to make money, go to school, have a nice job. I don't want to have a nice job. I'll do anything as long as I'm happy.
I mean, if you're a bum and you're happy being a bum, you should stay a bum.
There's just no big
As
people.
long as you're happy.
You're happy.
If I ever did fall in love, it would be really nice to be married and raise a family and stuff like that. But after beyond 30 years of age, it seems like, to me, life looks like a downhill slide from there.
Too many people are too materialistic, and they just after the money for it, and not necessarily for a job that they're really interested in.
Some people are born, I think, with certain ideals, which they sort of live with their whole life. And I know a lot of other idealistic people, and they do get hurt.
Oh, yes, I have a roommate that's idealistic. I could just throw her through a wall sometimes because I am very materialistic, and I think that it's a very materialistic world.
Anybody who doesn't have an ideal is never going to do anything or go anyplace. Because how can you be satisfied? See, you're constantly changing all the time. You have to have something as a goal.
Oh, you'd like to be my father, you'd like to be my dad, and give me kisses when I'm good and spank me when I'm bad. But since I left my parents, I've forgotten how to mouth. Oh, and I've got something to say, sir, I'm gonna say it now.
What you have there are a few of these rather bearded, unwashed characters with sandals and long hair who normally would be regarded sort of tolerantly as a lunatic fringe, which you put up with, but you do not necessarily encourage. And in effect, the campus has been turned over to these characters.
The best people and the most exciting people and the smartest people were gravitating towards the civil rights movement.
In June of 1965, Vivian was part of a group arrested and jailed in Jackson, Mississippi for marching without a permit. Sitting in her segregated cell, she resolved to spend her life working for social justice.
It was life transforming to be part of a social movement, a righteous social movement, where you were fighting for something that was bigger than yourself.
today ordered to Vietnam the Air Mobile Division and certain other forces which will raise our fighting strength almost immediately. Additional forces will be needed later, and they will be sent as requested.
Well, I don't want to go to Vietnam because I don't want to get killed. If I have to, I will.
I have the problem of realizing the attitude of my parents, especially my father. I'm certain that he would consider any refusal of mine to participate as nothing but cowardice, a lack of patriotism.
Gregory, why are you here?
Oh, I'm here to be inducted. I really don't want to be here. If there was some other way I could get out of being here, I would. But since I have to be here, I might as well go it on.
Well, not many people want to go to Vietnam, do they, Gregory?
No. I mean, I believe I stand a 50-50 chance in Vietnam and in this city of Chicago.
A 50-50 chance?
Sure.
Of what? Of coming back alive?
Yes.
Well, what kind of a chance do you stand in the city of Chicago?
The same.
We are not afraid to risk our lives. We have been risking our lives in Mississippi and Alabama, and some of us have died there. But we will not bomb the people, the women and children of another country.
What is happening here in San Francisco is really one of the only meaningful responses to the war and to the whole shock of the system. This is a meaningful response with alternatives, with creative human energies involved and active in doing things.
It was a dreamy thing, an idealistic thing, but we were feeling, you know, people did feel love. They did feel hope and goodwill, and that something truly positive and wonderful was going to occur and was occurring in their lives. That's why they thought it could occur in many other lives.
By summer, they were pouring into the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco.
A lot of people say to me, what are you doing? You're not doing any work. But we're doing the hardest work in the world because we're growing. We're trying to change.
When I'm on an acid trip, everything seems very much alive, very much full of energy, and very, very beautiful.
If you love somebody, and people here love everybody, if you want to make love to somebody, then you should.
I felt that what we were doing was a deep molecular reprogramming. You know, that music was coming in and just blasting our bodies free of all that old constriction.
We have some hippies out there in the Haight-Ashbury district in San Francisco. One of them the other day was giving some advice to his companions. He said, you know, your parents take care of you till you're 21, the government takes care of you after you're 65. You've only got 44 lousy years. You got to look out for yourself. This fella that was doing the talking had a haircut like Tarzan, he walked like Jane, and smelled like Cheetah.
The hippie trail led to exotic destinations around the world. But it also led to a lot of dead ends. In Asia, Rogan Taylor found more drug casualties than enlightenment among the seekers from the West.
People were flying into holy cities like Benares from California. For the Indians, it was a bit of a shock. You would see victims wandering around, not knowing what the hell they were up to anymore, off their heads on one thing or another, or indeed just culturally completely blasted.
Reality was catching up with the counterculture. Drugs, crime, and underage runaways plagued urban crash pads from London to California. The Haight-Ashbury police station became a clearinghouse for missing children.
The police allege that you were flushing marijuana down a toilet when you were...
Man, if that was marijuana, I wouldn't be flushing it down the toilet.
Where did you spend last night?
That's none of anybody's business, and I won't tell. I won't tell where I've been for the past 2 weeks. Ever.
How old are you, Sandra?
14. I've been through this before. I know what they want. They want you unhappy because you can't be happy where you are. That's why we ran away.
Under siege in the city, some believers in the hippie dream retreated to the country and confronted a whole new set of problems.
A lot of people went off and they became very raggedy because they really didn't know how to survive, and they didn't know how to grow carrots, and they didn't know how to, dig latrines, and they didn't know how to create alternative schools, and they had to learn all that.
So the hippie movement went back to the earth, having given the new youth culture another strange twist. But not everyone had time for the pleasures of the counterculture.
I liked smoking marijuana, I liked rock and roll music, I liked making love, and I resented that the war in Vietnam was requiring my attention when I would rather be doing something else. But because of the way I was raised and the beliefs that I had no choice but to go out and fight against those things I thought were evil.
Jeff Jones, who grew up in a pacifist Quaker home, was drawn into the increasingly violent world of anti-war protest. In October 1967, he was among the 100,000 demonstrators who marched on the Pentagon in Washington to demand the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Vietnam.
When we got to the Pentagon, there were thousands and thousands of people there, and the Pentagon was ringed by the 82nd Airborne. Things had reached the stage where the government had to call out the Army to protect the Pentagon from the people. It's both intimidating and it's also exhilarating because it means that the message of alienation and disagreement and contempt had apparently gotten through.
Some believed that there must be a sinister explanation for the uprising.
It is clear from the evidence that I have that this is a part of a move by the communists, especially of North Vietnamese government, to divide the American people, disrupt our war effort, discredit our government for the entire world.
But the same thing was happening in countries around the world. In Japan, anti-war sentiment ignited an explosion of violence between young demonstrators and the police. As many American flags burned in London as in Berkeley.
It wasn't just Americans' war, really. It was, but we saw it as being ours as much as anybody's, and it was... I don't think it was a conscious thing that this was America doing something wrong. This was just wrong.
The war provided the spark, but the conflict ran deeper. Anti-war demonstrations quickly turned into violent power struggles between youth and authority. In Germany, distrust of the older generation was colored by a history of fascist repression. When the government claimed emergency powers to maintain order, many feared the worst.
These emergency laws are nearly exactly the same than the laws which brought Hitler into power in 1933. And we are afraid that our parents are now doing the same without knowing it.
The same was true in Italy, where police and students battled for control of universities. In France, students were frustrated by outmoded curriculums, rigid rules, overcrowded classes, and dictatorial teachers. They were well aware of the upheavals in other countries, and some were ready for a fight of their own. One of them was Romain GOUPIL, an aspiring filmmaker documenting his own political passage.
Faced with my radicalization, my parents tried to reason with me in political discussions. But the more they tried to be reasonable, the more I revolted. And this isn't just true for me, but for my whole generation. Fortunately, at our age, our enthusiasm and our way of thinking also got us involved with other things, like going out on dates, to the cinema, and into relationships with the girls that we met in our political activities. The best way to seduce a girl was probably to talk about Trotsky or the Russian Revolution.
On May 3, 1968, police were called into the student quarter during a protest over rules against opposite-sex visitors in the dormitories. The young left-wing students and the conservative middle-aged police were natural enemies. And the mutual resentment suddenly boiled over. When the smoke cleared, the Sorbonne was occupied by the riot police. An extraordinary breach of traditional student territory. It was enough to mobilize an army of angry students, including Romain GOUPIL.
It was an astonishing expression of solidarity. Between 6,000 and 10,000 students went to the Latin Quarter. We started to overturn cars and set up barricades around the masses of students. And as has been done traditionally in Paris for a long, long time, we found ourselves behind the barricade saying, "We shall not be moved."
At 2 in the morning, the riot police attacked.
We had learned a lot of lessons from the United States, from Germany, from Italy, and we defended ourselves, which led to a truly violent confrontation.
Eventually, the police withdrew, and the students took over the university. The courtyard of the Sorbonne was transformed into a festival of art, philosophy, and revolution. An open seminar on how to remake the university and French society with true liberty, equality, and fraternity.
Everything that hadn't been said for years was coming out, and everything we wanted for the future, meaning the most utopian speeches, the most far-fetched revolutionary ideas, were going to see the light of day. A sort of huge gab fest, in a very pleasant way.
I'm socialist. I'm a revolutionary. I want to change the society.
But if you want to change something, you have to break something somewhere.
We would like to have freedom, but not anarchy. That's not what we want. We don't want young people to teach us after 2 wars what we have to do.
Everybody look at the students and they ask what we want. And before, they didn't even ask what we want. They didn't understood us. Now they are trying to understand us.
On May 13th, 300,000 Parisians demonstrated in support of the students. The communist trade unions joined in, raising student hopes that the workers might join them in a Marxist revolution. But many workers were afraid of anarchy in the streets.
A
friend of mine was worried all the time. He didn't have a garage. His car was parked on the street. And one morning, he went out and he found his car destroyed, with the other cars, completely ruined, in the middle of the street. When he got to the factory, he was still crying.
Still, the unions saw an opportunity to press their own demands. Suddenly, France was hit by a wave of strikes. All over the country, workers occupied their factories, demanding better pay and shorter work weeks. Then the rest of France joined in. Virtually everyone, from architects to farmers, and Paris ground to a halt.
There was no gasoline, no trains, no cars, no television, nothing. Everyone was on strike, and there was a kind of giddy feeling that we had all played a part in jamming the wheels of government.
Believing that revolution was at hand, a student delegation marched to an occupied factory to join forces with the workers. But the reception was not what they'd hoped for.
We heard on the radio that the students were on their way. So at that point, we locked all the gates.
The students begged to be let in, but it was rumored they planned to destroy the factory.
The day the strike was over, we would have to go back to work to feed our families. We couldn't allow them to damage our machines. What would we have done then?
The students pressed their case. We want to smash the system, not the tools, they said. But the gap between security-minded workers and radical youth was too wide to bridge. By the end of May, it was all over. Everyone was exhausted. There'd be no revolution this time. In the end, the system prevailed, but the people's attitude toward it would never be the same.
What we're left with from this time, not just in France, but all over the world, is the memory of an incredible moment of freedom, when the powers that be meant nothing, when the police meant nothing, when all of a sudden it was the people who counted and who spoke up.